Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast, where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And welcome to this week's weekly recap, where we just have 3 commits and a new track director to talk about. 3 football commits, I should clarify. But before we get into the show, we do want to thank the sponsor of the show, and that is Greg Arthur. If you want to have your name read out at the beginning of every single episode and also our undying appreciation, please be sure to check out the official sponsors link in our podcast or Twitter bios. But let's just dive straight into the first commit, who committed on the 4th of July, some 4th of July fireworks for the Cats. Or as Connor put it, yes, we're revealing that he did that introductory tweet. It's a gift from the founding fathers, and that is the Kansas City, Missouri cornerback, RJ Collins. And he comes in as a 3-star industry rating on 3, a 85 3-star on 24/7, a 4-star on ESPN. So yes, we're going to be saying that he's a 4-star. No, we will not be taking questions. And then Rivals has him as a 5.5 3-star. So the first thing that came to my mind was a run-stopping corner. But Connor, you can give your more full thoughts, and then I'll slightly elaborate on mine afterwards.
I think the best and low-hanging fruit comparison with RJ Collins is it's super obvious, and that's Jacob Parrish, because they're both Kansas City area corners. They're both about the same size. I think they're both in that like 5'11", 180 range. And they're both maybe most notable for their track times, because Jacob Parrish was very highly regarded as a track athlete on the Kansas side of the border. And then you have RJ Collins on the Missouri side of the border. He got 3rd in the 100-meter dash at the Missouri State meet in Class 5. And he not only won the 200-meter in Class 5, but he set the state meet record in the 200. He ran a 10.56 in the 100, which is absurd, and also kind of crazy that he didn't take gold. I guess at least he medaled, but he's super athletic, and his huddle tape, he shows that there as well. Just very similar archetype to Jacob Parrish, but I think that maybe he is a little bit better in that archetype. I'm not saying he's going to show up and be better than Jacob Parrish, because I mean Parrish was really an anomaly in that he was kind of a recruit that flew completely under the radar, and he was essentially getting starter snaps by the end of his true freshman season. So I'm not setting that bar for RJ Collins, but he does fit that mold better. And I think his tape is more convincing than Jacob Parrish's was at the high school level. But Collins is really instinctive, super athletic, and he's that type of player where you watch his huddle tape and he is just he kind of stands out despite being like 5'11", 170. He does stand out as a guy that he belongs not only there, but he belongs at a higher level.
Yeah, and to me that he does stick out. And the one thing that I kept thinking of whenever I was watching his film is, well, first off, I know what he was going to play, which I didn't know what Jacob Parrish was going to play coming out, because he just had so much tape across different positions, and the best tape was him at punt returner. But RJ Collins is a definitive either a corner or basically a slot corner or the jack safety, because the one thing that he has in spades is his run instincts and his general ability to track a ball carrier. His pursuit is honestly elite for a high school player. And that means that he could probably step on campus tomorrow and be in contention for one of the gunner spots on punt team. And I know, real exciting. Wow, you're comping a guy as a punt gunner. Wow, that's really awesome. I don't think he's just going to be a punt gunner. I think he's too athletic to just have that single role. But he just has that sort of mentality that Julius Brents had when he played the run, which was hilarious because the knock on Julius Brents when he transferred was that he refused to play the run. And then he came to K-State and was probably one of the best run support corners in the country. But yeah, I think RJ Collins sort of is a mold breaker for this class because he's a sub 6 foot corner, which I think he might be the first one in this class that's at least listed as a corner that's below 6 foot.
Almost certainly is.
Yeah. But I could also see him slotting in at safety. I think it just sort of depends how he fills out. If he stays at the same weight, he's probably going to be a pretty solid corner. But if he bulks up a little bit, maybe adds another 20, 25 pounds of good weight, he's probably going to end up being a stronger jack safety. But I like him just about anywhere, and I think he could play just about anywhere. Where he's lacking is he does need a little bit more time to sort of marinate in his technique and not rely on that athleticism as much in coverage, because I think he has 2 or 3 coverage plays in his highlight tape. One is him just getting beat but knowing to push the guy out of the back of the end zone, and the other ones are him in deep coverage and tracking, which really good skill set to have if you're playing like a deep third, which in a 3-3-5, who's to say what you're doing on any given play. But yeah, I really like the pickup of RJ Collins. He is, I'm going to bring him up pretty much anytime we get a defensive back commit. He's not JoJo Scott. JoJo Scott is different. But I really like RJ Collins. Do you have any final notes before we get to what I think is the most exciting commit of these 3?
Just 2 more quick notes. The first one, yes, he is the only corner committed under 6 foot. In fact, he's the only one that isn't 6'2". JoJo Scott is 6'2", as well as Martell Jackson. Both of those guys 6'2". And then also I found his 200-meter time 2:1:23 for his 200-meter dash, which was good enough to set a state meet record. So I'm assuming that is good. So
sources reporting he's fast.
Yes. If nothing else, we know that he is absurdly fast.
And speed kills, and you can't teach it. So, yeah. So welcome to the team, RJ Collins. Now, this is by far my favorite commit of these 3. He's fighting with JoJo Scott for my second favorite commit of the entire class, and that is Montario Elston from Parkview Magnet School in Little Rock, Arkansas. He's a 5'8", 170 running back, and he's rated as a 3-star across the board pretty much everywhere. And despite what people on Twitter or on message boards will say, that he speeds up his highlight tape, first off, who cares? We said this yesterday on Knights in the Ville, but making someone miss at 1.2 times speed is still making someone miss at 1.0 speed. Speeding it up does not change the content of the film. But Montario Elston reminds me so much of the archetype of Dylan Edwards and Devon Rice, where it's just this lightning in a bottle, sub 5'10", sub 5'11" running back who you get into space and everyone else is praying to every god that has ever been conceived trying to tackle him. That is Montario Elston in a nutshell.
Yeah, he is also one of my favorite pickups of the entire cycle. I'm going to really resist the urge to do comparisons because there are 2 very obvious short running backs to compare him to in K-State history from this century. But I'm going to refrain because I want him to be his own guy. With that being said, he plays to his greatest strength, I think, is his ability to mix his straight line speed with elite agility. He is able to move side to side without losing much speed. He could really be that next big running back name for K-State. I was super, super happy that we were able to fend off Arkansas for him because he's an Arkansas native. So being able to get this guy out of Arkansas's own territory, that's a massive win for the staff. But no, his film's incredible. He's a playmaker, and yeah, he does fit the mold that we seem to go for at running back a lot, which is the guy that like he's just a playmaker if nothing else, and he does a bit of everything. And Ontario Elston fits that mold. Uh, I don't have much to say about him that isn't just based on superlatives, but really, if you get the chance, I recommend watching some of his highlights because they are wildly entertaining.
Yeah. There are very few players that I would tell people to watch just basically as a treat. Montario Elston is probably the only player in this class that I would say to watch their highlights as a treat. Because even Lincoln Cure's highlights, it kind of gets sad a little bit because he's just bullying people. But Montario Elston is bullying people in a way that is very, very fascinating to watch because no one can touch him. It's genuinely a surprise whenever someone gets so much as a hand on him because he just has this insane level of twitch. He has this twitch. He has the ability to get up to his top speed really, really quickly. And just as important to that, because he's not a freight train back, he can stop that motion just as quickly and restart it. So it's a nightmare trying to tackle him in the open field. Now, you think with 5'8", 170, you think he wouldn't have much in the way of between the tackles running. And you might be right about that because very little of his film is between the tackles running. But there's a very good reason for that. He's the second running back on the team behind another power 5 or power 4 running back that's on the same team. So yes, this is the second year in a row that K-State has found a running back that is sub 5'10", that is sitting behind, or not sitting behind, but is RB2 to some guy who's going to end up at Power 4, probably a Big Ten or SEC school.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that we're not doing that 2 years in a row, especially with two running backs that are somewhat similar. The guy that that's starting over him is Cam Settles. I don't really have any intel on where he's going. On3 says that it might be Arkansas, but On3 just kind of likes to make things up sometimes. I don't have much else to say about Elston because I'm really trying to stop myself from making comparisons to past diminutive K-State running backs. But he I think really could be pretty special, and I think there's a lot to. I think that's a testament to Brian Anderson's recruitment and his recruiting abilities at the running back position, because there's been a few guys that he's brought in recently that I think do have that potential, like Devon Rice and Dylan Edwards. They have the potential to really be all-time like special K-State players. Ontario Elston, he's another guy. If he reaches his potential and achieves that playmaking ability that he has the chance to, he could go down the history books as well. But it's a little lofty standard, so I'll try and not put that on him right now. But yeah, he's really, really, really quality.
Yeah. And he just joins a running back room that's almost exclusively made of playmakers at this point. And next year probably ends up Joe Jackson's the elder statesman. Joe Jackson and Dylan Edwards are going to be the same class, I think.
I think so. I think that's right.
But yeah. So like next year's backfield is going to be nuts because it's going to be Dylan. Well, knock on wood. It's going to be Dylan Edwards, Joe Jackson, Devon Rice, John Price, and Montario Elston. That's not fair. That's cheating. That's ridiculous, man. That shouldn't be allowed to happen.
Yeah, we are really just kind of stacking talent, stacking playmakers in that room right now. Which every time we get one of these guys that like they're just like a mid-level 3-star, then you go and watch their tape, and it makes no sense why they aren't higher rated. I imagine a lot of times the only reason is because they aren't larger. Like, I think that's probably the case for a lot of them, but I think we've seen plenty, especially at K-State, that it doesn't really matter. It's a great tool to have, a la DJ Giddens. Like having a big running back is a huge help, but you don't have to be successful. And we're really leaning into that right now.
Yeah. And the last commit of the three that we're going to be talking about today is Ashton Moore from Lewisburg, Kansas. If that name sounds familiar, it's because it should. That is Austin Moore's little brother from Lewisburg. He's only rated on 24/7 right now as an 86 3-star. And this was one that sort of, I don't want to say it came out of nowhere because we knew K-State had offered him, but it was a commit that I don't think either of us were expecting at this point in the cycle. Probably. We thought he was probably going to be a later guy.
I definitely did. I saw the cat signal come out, and then I saw it was Ashton Moore, and my first reaction was just kind of surprise, I guess. I really didn't expect us to take him this early, but I mean, he's in the fold now. I mean, his older brother is going to end up being a 3-year starter at linebacker, and is really one of the better linebackers K-State's had in the last 10 years. So I that's probably at least some of the logic there is, what just bet that the bloodline stays intact, I guess. But yeah, I mean, his tape is like pretty decent. He was on a really good Lewisburg team. They won like 9-1 last year. They have a couple other Division I prospects on that team, and he's another in-state guy as well. So he has that going for him. But yeah, he plays a little bit of offense and defense. I think he's a running back offensively, which sometimes you have guys that look like guys that play on either side of the ball, but then you have guys sometimes at the high school level that do play two ways, and you just like see them like on the wrong side of the ball, and you're like, hey, why is this linebacker playing running back? And that's Ashton Moore to me, not because of like his ability or anything like that. It's just because of how he looks. Like I just like look at him and his pads, and I'm like, that's
That's a
just
linebacker.
that's a linebacker that they're hoping we don't notice as a linebacker, a running back right now. So, but hard hitter, pretty solid instincts, but a bit of a project, I think.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I think he's a little better than Austin Moore was whenever Austin Moore first committed, but Austin Moore was also a walk-on. But Ashton is, like you said, he's a hard hitter with solid instincts who probably needs a little time to marinate on everything else in his game, that's fine. You'll take that skill set because, it's a good linebacking skill set, especially for a 3-3. And we saw someone with a pretty similar starting skill set, albeit with a much higher athletic floor. And that was Austin Romaine last year. And Austin Romaine, I do want to clarify that Austin Romaine was a better player coming out of high school than Ashton is, but that doesn't make Ash a bad player. Both of them were pretty good coming out of high school, despite us being relatively lower on Austin Moore, or not Austin Moore, Austin Romaine. A part of that was because we literally did not get to see senior tape, by the way. But I'm not making excuses. I'm giving the reason. But yeah, I am fine with the Ashton Moore pickup. I'm not going to pretend that I'm over the moon or anything, or that this is like the best pickup that K-State has in this cycle. He's probably not even the best linebacker pickup that K-State has in this cycle, but he's a pretty solid piece to the defense and sort of completes the linebacking recruiting class for this year. You're muted.
Yeah, I muted to take a drink and I forgot to unmute.
That's a shame, man. It happens to the best of us.
Getting old, I guess. Only old people do that. But no, he's the third linebacker in this class. McGuire Richmond's another one who I really like. Recruiting services don't like him that much. I'll just have to tell them they're wrong. Then there's Weston Polk, who he committed at the end of April, and it feels just like an eternity since Weston Polk committed. I'm gonna have to go back and watch his huddle tape again because I genuinely forgot like any of his like notable skills. Yeah. So I bet he's like the second high, or like he's like a top 5 rated guy in the class. But yeah, this is a pretty good crop of linebackers that we brought in. But yeah, I definitely would put Ashton more on the lower end of the guys in the linebacker room that we've brought in. He is still a D1 guy, like nothing else. You know, this isn't like a lifeboat like favor to his older brother. Like, I don't think the staff is in the business of doing that, or else Lincoln Keir's brother would be on the roster right now. Yeah, it's but still, any week where you get 3 commitments, it's a pretty exciting week, especially for us. But not all of them can be Lincoln Keir's, where they're 5 stars, where you're beating the entire known world. Sometimes there are going to be guys on the quieter side, like Ashton Moore and RJ Collins, or a more regional battle, like with Ontario Elston. That just because they don't have the accolades and national coverage that Keir does doesn't mean that they aren't fantastic pickups in one way or another.
Yep, that's pretty much the perfect way to describe it. So that's all the new commits, but there is one more new cat that we have to discuss, and that is the new track and field director, which normally we don't talk about track and field because it's not one of the spectator sports, and we tend to only cover the spectator sports because of the incident the last time that we covered track. But it's a brand new director, and I'll just let Connor take this part because he's more knowledgeable about this than I.
Yeah, and I do need some redemption for the last time that we covered track. Maybe this will turn over a new leaf and let us start to cover a little bit more. But we have a new track head coach. Well, they're describing him as the director of track and field, which I guess kind of makes more sense because, I mean, at this level, you're running men's and women's indoor and outdoor track as well as cross country. So, like, if we want to get into like CEO type roles for head coaches in sports, like track might be the best example of it, other than maybe football right now. But I think this is a fantastic get. I don't think I've said his name yet. It's Travis Geffert. I won't spend a ton of time on this because I don't think much of our listener base particularly cares too much, but I do think it's worth sticking around and listening for at least a little bit because like this, I was actually really pleasantly surprised with how good of a hire this is on paper, at least. And that's even with the Gene Taylor handicap of expecting a pretty good hire. I really just sat and thought to myself mentally, I don't know if there's a realistic hire that we could have made that would have been much better. But we take Travis Geffert, an assistant, the lead assistant at Arkansas. And Arkansas is pretty widely regarded as probably like a top 3, maybe top 2 track program nationally.
No one's beating Oregon, by the way. That's number 1.
Yeah, I was going to say Oregon is the only school, I think, that maybe Texas, I guess, that's going to have a really good argument against them. But Arkansas is a very, very highly thought of track and field program. And Travis Geffert is a very, very highly thought of assistant. He's won National Assistant Coach of the Year 4 times during 2 separate stints at Arkansas, which was broken up with I think a 4-year term in Tennessee as an assistant. But his list of accolades and a attached PDF is substantial. It is 8 pages of accolades.
Yo, is this good?
It is actually. It's quite good, but I don't even know where to start with this guy. But he's coached several school records. Um, I'm not counting all. I'm not going to count all of this, but it looks like at least 70 All Americans, like 60 or 70 All Americans. Which to be an All American, it's based on your place at the national meet, which I think is like I think first team is 1 through 8, and like second team is like 9 through 16. I think, but he's also coached several national champions. Looking at this list, I'm not going to count all these again, but somewhere in the 25 total amongst several individuals. He's been a part of 2 team national championships as well, 2-time indoor national champions for Arkansas. Been a part of many, 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 many top 10 finishes, including a 4th place with Central Missouri and 2 top 10 finishes in the indoor with the University of Northern Iowa. So he has been successful at multiple stops. They've got the summary here. I should have just done this. 20 national champions, 106 first team All-Americans. He's coached 89 individual conference champions, and I think it was 37 team conference championships he's been a part of. So the point is that this guy is really, really, really good at coaching track and making athletes do good stuff. And I am not like a track like all-seeing eye, but I did throw a heavy frisbee for like 3 years at one point, and I was like very average at it. But I know enough to know that a lot of the battle with track is just getting the right people to show up and then coaching them up from there. And Casey does have a pretty good track history. We won an outdoor Big 12 title fairly recently on the women's side. And we've had several Olympians, which speaking of, this guy, Travis Geffert, he's coached 15 Olympians, 8 of whom will be at the Paris Olympics. So he has been around the block, and he's got a lot of experience with the elite of the elite in the track sports. So normally I'd say just trust Gene, but like we don't even have to say that here because it's just very obvious that Gene made a fantastic on paper hire. Like I genuinely don't know. Like I'm not here to say that I know the track coaching world or anything, but I am gonna like
go out on a limb here.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that there aren't many more realistic, better options that we could have gotten. Like the accolades only, this is a grand slam dunk, unbelievable home run.
Yeah. I don't have anything to add other than it's another seemingly great hire for Gene. Honestly, on paper, this might be the best hire he's made handicapping all sports.
Yeah, I think if you put everything in a vacuum, and I think like that, like you just like put it in a vacuum, everything's on the same level on paper exclusively. This is probably the best hire that Gene has made, at least based on accomplishments. I wouldn't really push back on that at all.
So welcome to the family. Hopefully we have a glorious track future ahead of us, so we can start reading off track results. That's not going to happen.
We can top 3 finishers. We'll have to do that.
That's a good idea. Do you have any final notes before we sign off?
No, I don't think I do.
All right. Well, if that's the case, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're AggievilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdward00.
I'm at Connor Baltazar, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out both the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store and the supporters link, both in our podcast and Twitter bios. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.